My name is Robert Lamar Kirkland, and I was drafted into the Marine Corps in '66. I went in, there was a 6-month delay or something before when you got your notice and then when you had to report. Then in June of '67, and then I served all of my time in Vietnam other than training. And then when I came back, I got out a little bit early with 6 months left, and that was in April of 71. This is the only picture I've got of what I looked like back then. I was a lot in better shape and had hair and so forth. So, I think there's two that I really, three. The Navy accommodation in a Combat V.
The green and white.
Yeah, this one here. And then the Cross of Gallantry. They were awarded.
Which one is that? Is that
this one?
These
two, yeah. Okay. And then this one, which is the Leatherneck High Rifle Award, because it's rarer than, I guess, maybe some of the others. But those two awards, the Navy accommodation with a Combat V and the Cross of Gallantry, were awarded to me during the Tet Offensive of '68 up in the Quang Tri province of Southeast Asia or Vietnam. And it was because during the Tet, I was flown in to different places to keep the communications going and so forth, and that's how they wrote it up and everything. I had it framed, but I didn't think about bringing it. It's a written award with the medal and everything framed too. And then those two I'm proud of, and I should have. I thought I was going to get the Purple Heart, but in the Marine Corps, I was shot down in a helicopter during the Tet Offensive, go flying into an outpost to help get the communications back. And then they said that no, when I was injured, my knees and feet were messed up, that you don't get it in the Marine Corps unless you're in direct combat. They issue. That's what I was told, and I never pursued anything, and it wasn't on my DD 214 form, so I just never pursued it. And then this other one, the Leatherneck Award for the High Rifle, that was an award that I was given when I finished at Parris Island. I chose not to go OCS. I was going to just do enlisted because they had offered me an opportunity to work in communication, which would use my electrical engineering background and degree. So I didn't know where I'd end up as a second lieutenant. At that time, they were very expendable in Vietnam. So I went enlisted, went to Parris Island, and on Parris Island, I didn't know this, but they gave this award for if you're the highest scoring rifleman on it, and they call it the Leatherneck High Rifle Award. And so, I'm proud of that. So that's about, those three are the one. Now, these other three ribbons on the top, they were meritorious unit citations that were given to 1st Marine Air Wing and 1st Marine Division. And all of that was mainly because of during the Tet Offensive of '68, during that period of time. And so we had those too. Well, yeah, did a lot of quick praying at times over there. Of course, we didn't have a chapel on our post or anything, so we had a chaplain. I guess really during the heat of battle, at times, you'd think like, oh dear Lord, help me through it. You'd say things like that, but I never got down and, during those heavy times, I never got down and really prayed for a lengthy period of time because you didn't have the opportunity to do so. I didn't feel like it then, but a lot of times I think after the fact, I was thankful. I was thankful I hadn't been shot or wounded or killed, and especially during the Tet Offensive. In Da Nang, now they had, in 1968, they had a huge offensive, and it started in January, the end of January through March, and that was all up in the I Corps when the North Vietnamese and Viet Cong were hitting the South Vietnamese armies and the American Allied armies all over. But in Da Nang, we had three Tet offensives, and it was in the first of the year in that January, February, and then again in May, and then in August. And one of those times, I forget which one, they got and hit our bomb dump in Da Nang. And for about 4 or 5 days, bombs were, going off and so forth. And when those went off, because our post was over near the bomb dump, and I was, a lot of times I was praying that things wouldn't come our way and so forth. And I don't know, it's just from time to time, did a lot of praying and then wondering kind of how God looked at you for killing people you didn't know. And I've always had those questions, how he regards you as a soldier, and even though you're told what to do or ordered to do things, but still, I don't know. Looking for justification in you, And during the Tet Offensive, I know up in Khe Sanh, gosh, I mean, you go back and you see all these thousands of bodies that were massacred, and a lot of it was through the Air Force bombing, programs that we had during the Tet Offensive. And I will compliment the Air Force. Had it not been for our air support, we would have never been able to do and achieve what we did in Vietnam. They saved us, really, because I'm just so thankful for them, for what they did. Air support was major benefit to us in Vietnam, not only through the Marine Corps Air Wing, but through the Navy and the Air Force all working together, and even the shelling from the USS New Jersey over there, when they were providing us naval gun support at times, so I have a deeper appreciation. I was born out in the country, and I was out hunting at the age of 12 with my own gun. We couldn't have a gun until Dad wouldn't let us have a one until we were 12 years old. And then after that, it was just a shotgun. And so really, I didn't have a lot of experience except with a .22 rifle until I got in the Marine Corps. But I will credit them. If you follow, and they require you to follow their instructions to the detail, for 2 weeks we trained before even going to the rifle range. And during that time, you condition your body to and adapt it to the rifle with the sling and stretching your muscles. I mean, it was like putting your body in a vice so that when you're shooting, which we shot at 200 yards standing and 300 yards kneeling and 500 yards in the prone position or laying down. And that's with open sights, no magnification at all. And I was amazed at what you could do and what I was able to do in holding, because at 500 yards, that 18-inch circle that is the target, it seems like such a small dot on the front of your sights. And you had to just center it right in the middle of your front sight and hold it there while you squeeze the trigger. And I mean, they teach you all that. And so it was good training. They trained us well. Excuse me, I just reminiscing about a lot of that. Anyway, it was good training, and I contribute everything as far as my knowledge and efficiency with weapons, pistol. I'd never shot a .45 automatic, which I carried in Vietnam until I was in the Marine Corps. And they trained us to shoot the 1911 .45, very efficiency, how to squeeze it, everything. And so that's how I was able to get the both expert in both weapons, the rifle and the pistol. It's I had several. It was telecommunication technician, top secret cryptographic technician.
Okay.
And so I covered the whole gamut of telecommunications, both, and I even worked on telephones, radios, like on Jeeps and backpacks that later they got me to troubleshoot for them. And all the way up to top secret communication centers for the headquarters, that was so forth. And teletype, teletype, which was coupled up with the cryptographic equipment and so forth. So.
Yeah, they still had something.
I never will forget. Well, when the Pueblo got captured by the North Koreans, that destroyer, it had a lot of our top secret equipment on it, and it fell into their hands. And I never will forget that we had to go to emergency codes, and then I was flown immediately to the Philippines for training on modifications, and we had to change all of our equipment, top secret equipment, before we could go back on ordinary line again, so to speak. And it was all because of it. I forget what year that was. I guess it was in the late 60s when they got captured.
the same. We had the same.
Well,
job
when were you in?
in
When were you? What your service time?
88 to 2017. 19.
Yeah. All this was, yeah.
Yeah.
I forget.
I still had we still had those old teletypes.
Really?
Yeah. I don't remember the exact nomenclature, but
My goodness.
yeah. We didn't use them often, but.
I don't, because I always felt I had to go back and learn in training. I had to go back because when I went through school out at Mississippi State, see, I studied on vacuum tubes, and it was before calculators were allowed. So, the basic of all of it is pretty much the same, but there's a lot of differences. I know that when I got to Vietnam, we had a real problem with communication equipment, what we call heat sink problems with transistors. If they heated up a certain amount, they would malfunction. They'd break down, wouldn't function. And this was a problem we had with a lot of our field equipment, radios, a lot of the infantry, and this is why then I started being called to work with 1st Division on a lot of their equipment, because knowing that more so than the regular trained technician, we determined that we had that heat sink problem, and then the equipment would be brought back in to the repair facility, and it would cool down, and it worked fine. Well, the technicians were then fooled into thinking, well, everything is okay. They'd send it back out, and the infantry would get back out there with malfunctioning equipment. So when you're trying to call in support and air support and things like that, their lives are at stake. So it's kind of funny. I got my mom and dad to send me a hairdryer. So, and I was setting up the procedure, at least for the Marine Corps, to when they were testing these pieces of equipment, when they got through working, and if they didn't show a problem, to take a hairdryer and heat them up real hot, as hot as they could, other than damaging and melting something, but with a hairdryer. And it showed that it would distinguish the component that was breaking down. And so later on, then we got hairdryers for technicians, and we solved that problem and everything. And then they came out, I understand, later with different designs to cool those transistors. And that was something, new when you were dealing with transistors, rather than me when I studied on vacuum tubes. A lot of times on vacuum tubes, if you had malfunction, you'd go up there and you could thump them and they'd rework it, they'd work again. And so a lot of new things happen, and moisture, high humidity was an extremely difficult problem with communication system. You had to make sure you kept it cool and as dry as possible. So we made changes to adapt to that climate, and it was on-the-job training, so to speak.
Right.
So I think that was kind of some of the most unique that related to my field. And then we also did, I came up with a new set. We had to develop a new system to allow for the contacts, for which when the message is sent out, it has little contacts and it deals with certain other electronic components. and I started using and ordering gold contacts. They were more sensitive because you're dealing with very, very small milliamp circuitry and current on these things when they're making and breaking, for teletype, and that solved that problem. We came up with several things like that, adapting to the conditions in Vietnam. Corrosion was a big problem over there with that high temperature, high humidity.
Yeah, I was in the Philippines, so it was.
Oh, you were?
Yeah, that was.
Well, one of our bases that I was sent to was a naval base communication in the Philippines when we would had to be briefed on all the modifications. That's where they sent me, to the Navy base there off of Subic Bay.
Yeah.
There.
Yeah, I was there, been there. Because we would get tired of RBX, we would go down and see what they had in there.
Oh, really?
But now we got to correct Glover, because Glover's of the opinion that only he and I had been to Subic Bay.
Glover Triplet?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Well, I think he was just kind of in and out of there because he was Army. But yeah.
And the old, I never will forget the Goonie birds. You remember the problems they had with the Goonie birds that were messing up planes and flying into their jets there and propellers?
Wow.
Oh, up there on the air base there at Subic Bay, they really had a problem. It was so funny. And I never will forget watching them when they were coming in, landing. They're graceful when they're flying, and they've got a huge wingspan. And then when they come in, they just tumble. They can't go in and just light. They're the funniest things I've ever seen. They were Goonie birds. I've never forgotten them. But it was there at Subic Bay.
Yeah, I think they pretty much eradicated them by the time I was there.
Really?
Yeah.
They really had a problem with them back in the early part of the war, I understand. I was only there that one time during that reassignment for that. So that was the only time I remember. So
Yeah.
they had a great cafeteria. The Navy had I loved eating there at the cafeteria. And the Subic Bay, and also there was another one that we had to go over to. I forget the name of the post, but I had to go from Subic Bay by a bus out to it was a communication base out on a point from Subic Bay. I don't know.
There was Cubic Point.
Maybe it was Cubic Point.
But there's some other communication outstations.
Maybe it was that. I can't.
San Miguel was one, and Camp John Hay.
Of
course, they could have renamed everything in 22 years.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Anyway, that was always.
We gotta correct Glover next time we're together and see him.
That what?
Let Glover know that you'd been to Subic Bay as well.
Oh, yeah. I had not ever talked with Glover about it, and so I'll have to talk to him about it. Even though he's in the VFW with me, it seems like we never have time to just sit down at one time and talk about your experiences.
Yeah.
And I was mentioning to our commander, I said, sometime I would like to have all the members of the VFW one night have a dinner and have each one just stand up or briefly describe the branch of service they were in, where they were located, what they did, and so forth, so we'd get to know everybody more personally.
Right, yeah.
And
Like what we're doing right now.
yeah, it's really interesting. I'll keep that in mind. Thank you for sharing that about Glover.
Yeah, that's funny. Anyway,
Well, I thought he was in Korea.
he was, but
Right?
because Dad was recalled, got out after World War II, was recalled for Korea, and he was sent to the Philippines. And so I think that they used it as kind of like a support base, similar to what they used it in Vietnam.
Us in Vietnam, yeah. Of course, the Navy. We didn't have a Marine base there. We used the Navy since we're a branch of the Navy.
I think we would do occasionally go joint.
I know. Well,
So I forget why
I'll
he
have to
was
ask
there.
him when he was there.
But I think it was probably in the early 50s, because that was his period of service. But it's funny because now we've got what I would say maybe 3 generations, if you will.
That's interesting. Thank you. I'm glad you mentioned that.
That's cool because that makes in Vietnam.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I served all of my time was there. During that time, the Marine Corps had 13-month tours, and I was ordered directly there right out of training as soon as we finished up, and went there. And then after the 13-month tour, they came back and they asked me to extend, and I said no, I just want to do my time, and I'm going back, wanting to get out and go back and finish my schooling and on the GI Bill. And they said, well, you've got enough time. We can send you. We're obligated to send you back to the state and not keep you here straight through unless you volunteer. And then we can leave you there for a month or two, and then because of necessity, we'll ship you back over here. We want you and need you over here, working on this equipment. So a long story short, I found out that if they were going to do that, and I was going to have to do another tour, a full tour, they had a program set up for 6 months extension. And so by extending voluntarily for 6 months in Vietnam, you got 1 month free leave plus travel time to any designated home address. All right. Well, I went to the JAG lawyer that we had, and I said, it said designated. It didn't say your real home address. He said yes. So I can designate the U.S. Embassy anywhere in the free world, and they're obligated to pay me for my travel there and back. And so I did that, and I got 1 week R&R to break up that 6 months, where you only would have had 1 week R&R to break up the 13-month tour again to get a break. So that's what I did. I did that 3 times, and then I was able to get back and get out if I had 6 months or less early. And so I was able to be released as soon as I hit the United States coming back. But the first one, I went to Helsinki, Finland. And I had to put a designated embassy because they were sending orders there for me to pick up on where and when to report back to go back to Vietnam. So I would plan half of it was 30 days vacation or trip, and I'd spend half of it going one way, and you could request an open purchase ticket at that time, I found out, and I could make my own travel going. And I went through, started out in Paris, Frankfurt, Germany, and then went on up to Helsinki, came back through Sweden, Norway, Denmark, coming back. And so I just scattered it as much as I could, and my orders then would have been there by the time I got there, and then I spent a few days in Finland and then touring, and then I came on back on the trip back. And so I ended up with about 30 days free leave plus travel time, which usually was about 5 days. They allowed about 5 days on these trips. And then the second one I had put in for Jerusalem, Israel, but they wouldn't let me go to Israel at that time because of my top secret clearance. So the nearest place I could go in that direction was Athens, Greece. So I went through Portugal, Spain, Italy going, and came back through Milan, Italy, and Zurich, Switzerland, and Austria, coming back on that trip. And then on the third one, I put in for Buenos Aires, Argentina. And I went down to, started in Cozumel, Mexico, and went all the way down through Bolivia, Peru, and Chile. And then I flew over from Santiago, Chile, to Buenos Aires, Argentina, came back through Rio de Janeiro and Caracas, Venezuela, and Jamaica, coming back. So that was my third. So I really, because of those extensions, I was very fortunate in seeing the world. I mean, I took full advantage of every opportunity that I had. And fortunately, I only had minor wounds and everything. So, and I came back, and looking back on it, I'm glad I did it. Rather than otherwise, you wouldn't have had an opportunity to see anything,
Right.
except just serving you another 13 months in Vietnam. And then I came back and got out. From 1st of April to June, out early, because that was less than 6 months. And at that time, they were gearing down. In 70 and 71. We had already been told we were going to pull out of Vietnam. So, which was sad. I hated that we, and all the other soldiers hated that we spent all those resources and wasted all those lives and everything and have nothing to show for it. In Korea, they have South Korea that was freed up to the 38th parallel. But the media and the public turned against us, and they, under political pressure or whatever, our government decided to pull out and end it.
Well,
so
on the one hand, 50,000 is enough.
Yeah, it was, and it was no. Oh, what was so sad, Roberta, was all of the lives in South Vietnam that we caused to get killed because we got them committed and then pulled out. And that was very irritating, very frustrating. And because after the Tet Offensive, which they had planned to use to turn the U.S. public against the war, Ho Chi Minh, and and we defeated them. But I never will forget, on a news I saw later, Walter Cronkite, I never will forget it. he was broadcasting the war on Vietnam, and he made the statement, "I don't see how we can win this war." And I never will forget that. His I'm paraphrasing. He was talking on about his opinion, and after that I just despised the man, for what he did to us and what he helped initiate, and all of America was listening to him, and that was bad. But I think that the South Vietnamese people would have been better off had we never even gone there. And they could have they ended up now, and they would have ended up like they are now, and with all those millions of people alive and families and relatives just destroyed. And what was also, I think, never broadcast was all of the big millions that were massacred and killed after we pulled out. I mean, I don't know. Did you ever see the movie Killing Fields?
No.
It was one of the most realistic. I mean, just fields full of bodies. It was sad, real sad. And I can understand why a lot of countries don't have faith in believing us and sticking with us now, because but I still think America is worth fighting for, and I think it's the best Christian country in the world. And if we can ever get it back to the true Christian values, that we'll have it back where it needs to be.
And people don't understand.
I just like saying Christian because I like to use that term, and I use it because it encompasses everything that needs to be covered or explained in that one word, Christ-like or Christian values. And even though so many times I didn't feel like I deserve the right to say that, because I'm far from being, flawless and so many mistakes. And I just remember a lot of times myself that how I felt that, I just felt like I enjoyed at times when we were attacked, killing people. It's just, it was a feeling of survival, maybe. And I always just wondered, I never thought I would feel that way, being a country boy from southeast Mississippi that had never been exposed to such extreme conditions. And when you see your friends and the people next to you being killed and eliminated, there's some deep hatred there. There it was for me. And I know my mother, I never will forget when I came back, she said, Bob, you changed so much, but the thing you walk around like you got a chip on your shoulder, just waiting for somebody to give you a reason, to knock it off. And so, I don't know. That was. I didn't realize it at the time, but I remember her telling me that, and that stuck with me. And I tried to be more conscious of it after that. But I don't know. My wife Becky, she had to live with it for even later when we married. There were certain things that she had to be aware of, you know, and sometimes I just get in a mood and blow up. I mean, it's just temper and frustration or something. But hopefully, I'm getting better. Anyway, with God's help.
Right. Thank God for grace.
Yes, a lot of it in my case.